girl Tynesha Renee here. We are back with another late night chit chat. So I've been thinking about marriage a lot lately, y'all. And honestly, I'm starting to wonder if what I want is realistic at this point. Based on these statistics that we've been hearing a lot recently, it seems like Black women have this looming cloud of uncertainty when it comes to falling in love and settling down. Which brings me to today's topic. Should Black women marry out? Just so that everyone is on the same page, marrying out is marrying outside of your race. And spoiler alert, if you are a Black woman watching this, you might want to consider doing so, sis. I honestly cannot believe that I'm even having this discussion with y'all right now, because if you know me and you follow my channel, you know that I love Black people, especially Black men. But, my last video really put a lot of things into perspective for me. So in my last upload, which I've linked up here so you guys can watch it when you're done here, it basically was a call to action so that all of us can get on the same page and hopefully reignite the dynamic of Black love. I don't know what I was expecting, but it just further exemplified for me that it's just messed up, y'all. But the negative language about women, making jokes about violence against women, just overall disdain, anger, negative emotions toward women, it really just showed me that I, as a Black woman, may not be desirable to the men that I'm desiring. So with that being said, what does that mean for Black women who really do want to marry Black men? Marriage rates in general are showing a decline, but the Black community is being impacted at a disproportionate rate. So the million-dollar question is, how did we get to this point? The narrative that is being heavily pushed nowadays is that feminism led to women not needing a man and ultimately being seen as less desirable. However, solely blaming this dynamic on the feminism movement means that you are disregarding history. There is no singular reason why the Black community is in the state that it's in. I believe that it's a collection of things.
Black feminism can be traced back to the 1800s. However, Black women were largely left out of the feminist movement that was dominated by white women. It wasn't until the 1960s and 70s that the Black feminist movement began to make strides. There was growing tension between the feminist and civil rights movement because, what you mean you gonna leave us out?
Now I'm gonna pause here because this is a good point in the video to talk about the decline of Black marriages. Please keep in mind that we're discussing the 1960s and the 1970s. As you can see, the time span of the rise of Black feminism overlaps with when we begin to see a decline in Black marriage rates. For this reason, many people attribute the decline in marriage to the feminism movement. But what else was happening during this time?
In June 1971, President Richard Nixon declared the war on drugs, which he said was intended to combat drug addiction amongst US soldiers in Vietnam. But as we know, that wasn't really the case.
We absolutely cannot leave this part in history out, as the war on drugs led to the mass incarceration of millions of Black men, which, by the way, is still ongoing.
So as we kind of saw before in my previous graphic, Black people were outpacing white people in terms of marriage for a very, very long time. And then we saw this sudden decline of marriage going into the 1980s. As you can see in this chart, there is a direct relationship between incarceration rate and the increase of Black men who were not married by age 35. So we can conclude that the mass incarceration rates have had a direct impact on a decline in marriage.
Today, Black men are incarcerated at 5 times the rate of other races. If Black men are being locked up and are therefore inaccessible to Black women, how can we maintain such high rates of Black marriage? But hold that thought. Another thing that was happening during the 1970s leading into the 1980s was the loss of millions of manufacturing jobs in the United States. Due to the outsourcing of manufacturing positions overseas, many Black men who were skilled workers and had trades faced unemployment. people began pursuing higher education for more desirable jobs, and as we know, there is a disproportionate number of Black men pursuing higher education in comparison to Black women and other racial groups. Black men struggled with loss of income, meaning that it was harder to provide for a family. And as we know, financial stability and economic status has been and likely always will be a huge incentive for marriage in the United States. So this is just my hypothesis, but it is very likely that there was no longer as much incentive for Black women to marry. So as you can see, it is very, very layered. And that brings us to where we are today. So we know that there are less Black men to choose from due to numerous outside influences. So what's up with this notion that Black men are getting married at much higher rates than Black women? This is where I'm really going to encourage y'all to do your own research. I have discovered that a lot of the things that we're told about Black marriage is actually cap.
So as we can see, Black men do marry more than Black women. Based on 2017 data, there is a higher number of Black men getting married by about 6%. We also do see that Black men are still marrying Black women, but we also see that Black women tend to marry Black men more often. When we look further into the numbers, Black men are way more likely to marry out than Black women. So ladies, we need to really reflect on whether or not it's a good idea to hyper focus on Black men and exclude other races of men when Black men are not doing the same. You're essentially limiting your dating pool while Black men are expanding theirs.
Which brings me to the first reason why I feel Black women are screwing ourselves in the love department. Contrary to popular belief, Black women tend to have this unwavering sense of loyalty to Black men. No matter how often we complain, many, if not most, Black women would prefer to marry a Black man. As you can see by the statistics, okay, and numbers don't lie, Black women tend to have more resistance when it comes to marrying out. But the irony of this is that Black women are less likely to date men who don't have the same financial status or education level as they do. But mainly the education piece is what I see a lot of educated Black women hyper focus on. As most of us know, Black women are surpassing Black men in higher education. So if you are an educated Black woman and you know that you want a man who either has the same level of education or more education than you, it doesn't make logical sense to limit yourself to a pool of men who are, statistically speaking, more likely to be less educated than you are. Woo. So I know that that was a lot to take in, but it definitely gives us a lot to think about. So ladies and gentlemen, because y'all can participate in the conversation as well, should we as Black women be marrying out? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.